Today we'll discuss Budget 2019-20. As we know, budget is a very important document which introduces fiscal policy and fiscal strategy through which the entire economy is given a direction and a great push, which in turn affects not only the production institutions but the common people also, their livelihood, their employment, their consumption pattern, and thus it affects not in the present of the country but the coming future, the unfolding future also. Budget 2019-20 is a second budget this year. Before election, interim budget was introduced, and some elements of new policies were hinted that time also. Though those policies which were hinted in interim have been repeated again in the full-time budget, and some new measures have also been introduced here. To understand that the complications of budget, we need to first of all know that there is a budget speech delivered by the finance minister, and there is a medium term fiscal strategy and there is a medium term fiscal policy statements. Along with, there is also a macroeconomic review statement. One by one, we'll inside the central theme of each of this statement and document. We'll take first of all the budget speech and the content of that speech. If we look at the budget with figures, receipts of the government are shown and expenditures of the government are also shown here. Receipts are divided into two parts. Some receipts are called revenue receipts. Others are called capital receipts. Expenditures are similarly divided into revenue expenditures and capital expenditures. Revenue expenditures are incurred to maintain the present capacity of the economy, including interest payment, defense expenditure, subsidy expenditure, administrative expenditures, and expenditures on servicing of old loan, etc. Capital expenditures are incurred to expand the capacity of an economy, which includes investment in infrastructure, both physical and social infrastructure, investments in public sector enterprises, repayment of debt, and also extension of loan to state governments and other foreign countries. So, the capacity of economy expands through capital expenditure. In this budget, out of total expenditures, of roughly 28 lakh crores, that is 27.86 lakhs of crores. Major part is deployed on revenue items, and that is 24.48 lakhs of crores. This is not a very healthy state. After spending on revenue items, the amount left for capital item is very small, as you can see, which is 3.4 roughly lakhs of crores. But this is not a new trend. For decades, capital expenditure in India has been less and it is reducing as compared to revenue expenditures. This budget is tried a little hard to increase somehow capital expenditure, but revenue expenditures have not provided sufficient space through its reduction. It is increasing very fast. Revenue deficit is basically the gap between receipt and expenditure, and FRBM Act passed by the Parliament in 2003 has a target to reduce revenue deficit to zero level, but in this budget it is been targeted to be 2.3% of GDP. So we are far ahead of the 0% target. Next year the government plans to reduce it further to 1.9% and next to next year to 1.7%. So trying hard to reduce revenue deficit so as to release fund to deploy in capital items, which will provide momentum to the growth of economy. But the pace of improvement is not fast enough. In tax revenue matters, there are certain receipts which are called tax receipts and others are called non-tax receipts. Tax receipts are growing fast enough, particularly the direct taxes are growing very fast. Encouraging. Indirect taxes are also growing, but not as fast as the direct taxes. And the government has a plan to further improve direct taxes by introducing some surcharge on persons earning more than 2 crores per annum and earning more than 5 crore per annum. Those who are earning more than 2 crore will have to pay 3% surcharge, and those who are earning more than 5 crores have to pay 7% surcharge. Direct taxes also include corporate income tax or tax on company's profit. The budget has planned to reduce the burden of corporate income tax on small and medium enterprises. Last year, those companies having a turnover of up to 250 crores were required to pay 25% corporation tax. This year, those who are having turnover up to 400 crores have to pay 25% tax. So this is a big relief for small companies and medium-sized companies, which expectedly would attract more investment in startup companies and small ventures and old ventures also. In indirect taxation, government has taken a little hard measures. Many custom duties have been increased, and excise duty on petrol and diesel has also been increased. So that may demotivate those companies which are importing raw material and intermediate goods. Their cost may increase, and that may further reflect in growing inflation of industrial goods. Perhaps this is why share market has not welcomed this budget. It has declined sharply. And indirect tax matters, that is nowadays GST. GST is quite stable. Decisions about GST are not taken in the budget, it is taken off budget. Custom duty decisions have been taken here, mostly increasing. Custom duty on gold increased, custom duty on silver has been increased, custom duty on many other items have been increased. We are living in an era of global protectionism. Chinese are taking protectionist measures, Americans are taking protectionist measures. So maybe in reaction to this growing protectionism, India has also tried to safeguard its own companies by increasing custom duty so that domestic producers would have a larger say in the domestic market. They can sell more goods in their home market. and foreign goods would be imported less in quantity. So receipt is growing fast enough, but expenditures are also growing, and so that revenue deficit is declining only marginally. So the whole overall structure of budget is, we can't say it is bad, it is good, but it's not very promising. Capital expenditure, government has underlined, is very important to create a virtuous cycle of investment and growth. But government has said that most of the investments should be done by private companies, and government would be a facilitator. At the same time, government has also underlined the fact that public investment attracts private investments. And so, public investment in infrastructure, social infrastructure like education, health, housing, sanitation, drinking water should increase, as well as public investment in physical infrastructure like road connectivity, aviation, waterways, inland waterways, offshore waterways, that is sea transport. So there is a Bharatmala for road connectivity program, there is a Sagar Mala for port connectivity, and there is a inland waterway, that is Rashtriya Jal Marg project, which is going on under implementation. These are projects where the government is making investments, and hopefully this will create crowding in effect, that is, it will attract private investment, and through that investment the growth momentum would get a little strength. Other things in budget which are popular things, whether there is a tax relief to common man in case of income tax. Income up to 5 lakh is already tax free even last year. This year further relaxation has been given. Those who are buying houses priced up to 45 lakh rupees and taking loan from any institution, 1.5 lakh of interest payment would be tax free, apart from 2 lakh which was earlier. So effectively, if they are paying 3.5 lakh as interest, they don't have to pay income tax on that component of income. And those who are buying a bigger house, having higher prices, they will not get that kind of relief. They'll get only 2 lakh rupees of interest relief. So small and medium families would get a bigger relief in terms of income tax. There is also a relief for small traders, shopkeepers. Government has promised to launch a pension scheme, and the coverage of that scheme would be broadened. And there is a claim that it will affect 3 crore traders and shopkeepers. So that pension scheme is a relief for common man. In income tax reduction is a relief for common man. Higher surcharge on rich people is also kind of socialist in nature, that is relief to low income group, and higher burden on high income group may narrow down inequality in the society. There is also some concern displayed about inequality between rural India and urban India. So in rural India, government has tried to invest more in infrastructure of all kinds, road connectivity. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana phase 3 has been allocated larger amount of fund, and gas connectivity, electricity connectivity, drinking water connectivity to rural India, Nal Jal project is there. So there is some kind of proposals, but these are not new, these are old proposals and which is be allocated more fund. The new proposals in infrastructure segment, which we trace here. First of all, we show investment, and then we divide into 2 parts in infrastructure and in public sector enterprises. Government has said that infrastructure investment is very important. India needs to invest 100 lakh crores of rupees in next 5 years in infrastructure, and that amount of money only government cannot invest. So private investors must be attracted, FDI must be attracted, foreign portfolio investment must be attracted. So there is some relaxation in FDI in insurance sector, The institutions which are playing the role of intermediaries in insurance sector would have some relief. Those who are portfolio investors, they will be given a bigger limit on investment in Indian companies, particularly dealing in infrastructure. Infrastructure funding companies which sell bonds to mobilize funds, NRIs can invest there, and even if the investment is having a lock-in period, they'll be given permission to sell the bonds to Indian investors. So that is a trick or tactic to attract foreigners in infrastructure investment. For infrastructure investment, government is also a tactic to liquidate a land bank which is with the ministries of the central government and with the public sector enterprises. Government has said that there is public-private partnership to utilize that land of the government to develop social infrastructure which will be of common use, and to also develop low-price houses. And this way, investment targets could be met. Apart from that, the banking reform and financial institution reform also government is trying to make some initiatives. Air India would be disinvested, strategic disinvestment. You may recall that Balco was disinvestment strategically some 10-15 years ago. VSNL, Videsh Sanchar Nigam Limited, was also disinvested strategically. Balco was given to Anil Agarwal and VSNL was given to Ratan Tata. So that same route of strategic disinvestment would be utilized in Air India as the proposal is there. And there would be a strategic disinvestment even in non-financial institutions of the government and maybe some financial institutions also. Now, this could be a very controversial issue because in case of strategic disinvestment, there are certain suspicion and allegations of collusion between the government and some big entrepreneur or big corporate honkos. Let's see how it unfolds in future. But given the limitations of the funding of government, private participation cannot be avoided. We have to somehow attract them. Government has also said to set up a committee to suggest measures to mobilize fund for infrastructure. That is, infrastructure funding options would be explored by the committee and recommendations would be made to the government. And that recommendations would be disclosed later on when the committee gives its recommendations. There are certain initiatives that government wants to do in aviation industry. Government wants to create some niche processes. Government wants Indians to enter into aviation lease out business and aviation rental business, which we don't do nowadays. We actually lease in aeroplanes and other vehicles, but the vision is that we have to lease out. It can give some relaxation. Many aviation companies in India like Jet and others are left with excess capacity. Their aeroplanes are grounded. They are not able to pay the lease fee. So if they are encouraged and allowed to lease out some aeroplanes, their cost can be reduced and there could be some viability could be brought into their business. In aviation, government also want India to enter into maintenance work, repair work and operation work of aeroplanes so that we will have a new kind of business emerging in India, and the people having skills in that sector would have jobs there, and the economy would also grow. So some new exciting proposals in aviation industry. Let's see how it unfolds in coming future. Generally, government does not say about embassies and how the foreign policy would be managed. But this budget has also said that in Africa, we will expand our footprint, will open more embassies. Some embassies and diplomatic missions have been opened this year, and 4 new will be opened in 1920 again, and there would be some tourism sites also in India to attract foreigners, and the embassies would encourage foreigners to come to India and iconic tourism sites would also attract foreigners to come India. So tourism industry is also one which requires a huge investment in infrastructure so as to make it more attractive a destination for India. Women power has also been underlined. There is a phrase used by Finance Minister that is Nari Tu Narayan, that is woman, you are the god. And so there is a phrase used by the Finance Minister that so far we have been having women-centric policy. Now we will have women-led policy or women-led initiatives. Women entrepreneurs and enterprises will be given encouragement. One woman per SHG will be given 1 lakh rupees of loan under Mudra. This will bring about some quality change. Hopefully, their participation would be improving. There is one more initiative which is new, and let's say how it works. But government has said that there would be a social stock exchange. Social stock exchange could be utilized by voluntary organizations and trust and NGOs to mobilize funds by selling bonds and other financial instruments. This will be an entirely new platform for this kind of social institutions, and women can take part. Generally, women take part in this kind of social initiatives. So funding would be improved, and the growth momentum would become more welfare centric, more inclusive, and social infrastructure would also be taken care of. So infrastructure, both physical, which provides momentum to economic growth, and social, which provides some direct benefit and relief to common people, have been underlined importantly. Apart from social infrastructure, government has also said that the participation of workers in economy must be improved by relaxing labor laws. So we have plethora of labor laws, and the proposal is that all the labor laws would be integrated and 4 codes of labor would be created. Kaushal development, that is skill development, is also going to be emphasized, and the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana would create a skill not only to meet the domestic needs of enterprises but also export labor to foreign countries. Apart from there, government has also said that participation of youth in sports can also be a very creative model for not only employment generation but to having a healthy life for youth also. There is a proposal to commercialize space technology and our capacity of space launching. So a company has been set up recently, that is called New Space India Limited, NSIL, New Space India Limited, and this will commercialize our space capacity. That will bring some export earning, and the Udan Karikram, which is already going on, would meet the domestic needs, and this will try to cater to global needs. In infrastructure again, metro rail is going to be expanded, as you know, in more and more cities. People have been given recently in March only National Common Mobility Card, NCMC, National Common Mobility Card. This will make their use of infrastructure services more convenient. And there is you have already heard that electric vehicles are going to be given a push. So GST on electric vehicles has been reduced from 12% to 5%, and those who are taking loan to buy electric vehicles would have another tax-free loan facility. That means 1.5 lakh of tax interest they are paying on car loan will be tax-free under FAME, FAME scheme. There is a new slogan given in the budget, One Nation, One Grid. That is important. One Nation, One Grid. One Nation, one grid will include many grids. It will include a road grid, it will include a rail grid, it will include gas grid, it will include power grid and water grid. So these are massive. If you visualize that to create this kind of national grid, a huge amount of investment is required. Not only investment, modern equipment should be required, a large number of skilled workers should be required, many organizations' efforts should be required. So these are some proposals which are having some promising possibilities for employment also, and for giving momentum to growth. We will now look at this is about the present budget, and you know that this is a budget presented by Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman. She is the first woman finance minister, full-time finance minister, who was presented the budget. Before that, a woman had presented budget, but she was prime minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and also holding Ministry of Finance in 1970. So if we compare a little bit, that the budget presented by the first woman, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and the budget presented by a first full-time woman finance minister, there are some parallels. In 1970, Indira Gandhi had increased taxes on companies, increased taxes on persons, she has increased taxes on domestically produced industrial goods, that is excise duty. She had also increased taxes on imported goods, that is custom duty. And this time again, taxes have been increased. Maybe a woman like to put more burden on the economy. The next thing, apart from here, we will discuss the fiscal strategy statement. It was required in FRBM Act 2003 that along with an annual budget, government would also place before the parliamentarians, that is parliament, its strategy as to how to manage, how the government is thinking to manage budget in the coming 3 years. And government should also have 3 yearly rolling targets of revenue deficit, budget fiscal deficit, primary deficit. So that document has also been presented, and that says that if you look at 2018-19, well, this is current, that is last year, and now 2019-20, which is current year, 2020-21, and 2021-22. Look at revenue deficit, RD, then look at fiscal deficit and primary deficit. In 18-19, fiscal deficit was 3.4% in the revised estimate. This year it is 3.3% budgeted. In 2020-21, it is likely to reduce, as the government has said, 3%, and in 21-22 also it will be retained at 3%. This is the target mandated by the FRBM Act, not further down. We have to reduce it to 3% and maintain it. Revenue deficit in 18-19 was 2.2%. This year it is 2.3%. Next year it is likely to reduce to 1.9%, and next to next year 1.7%. The mandated target under the Act is 0. So we are still far behind the target. More efforts will be required in future. Primary deficit this 18-19 is 0.2%. This year also 0.2%. Next year it will be 0. And next to next year it will also be 0. Fiscal policy cum fiscal strategy statement has said that our taxes would grow, that is direct taxes would grow faster roughly 10%, 12%, maybe 13%. And indirect taxes would not be growing as fast. It will be growing 7%, 8% the range. And in the next 3 years, economy is assumed to grow 7.3% and 7.5% in next year. Given that anticipated growth, these are the targets. If the actual growth of economy remains below, the actual deficit may go up. And if the actual growth exceeds the expectation, the deficit may further be down. This is what the 3-yearly medium-term fiscal strategy document and fiscal policy document says. Now we will sum up and look at the main points which you have to keep in mind for examination purpose. First of all, government has talked about virtuous cycle of investment and growth to maintain and to strengthen this virtuous cycle. Government has placed highest importance on investment, not only in production institutions but also in infrastructure, that is investment in enterprises, engaged in production and investment in infrastructure. Infrastructure, both physical and social. There are some schemes mentioned for every component of infrastructure. There are certain financial figures are given. The financial figures are not very advisable to recall and to mug up, but the schemes and the programs you should keep in mind. Government has said that we will strengthen Make in India campaign, will produce more defense goods in India, will produce more vehicles in India, will produce more electronic goods in India, will produce more modern fab and batteries in India and medical equipments in India. This way, budget is trying to give momentum to economic growth, and budget is trying to make the growth process socially inclusive, and which will improve the satisfaction level of society. So this is the strategy through which the government intends to take the economy forward and create a $5 trillion economy in next 5 years, that is by 2024, 2025. Let's hope our economy grows so fast and so big that we can take pride to be the 3rd largest economy, which we already are under purchasing power parity based GDP accounting, but in otherwise dollar terms also we reach there. Thank you very much.